The financial needs of a business go beyond tax and attest services. That's why CTBK goes beyond accounting services and offers outsourced solutions through their affiliation with CFO Solutions Plus. These additional services allow clients to focus on their operational and long-term strategic goals. Trust CTBK's outsourced solutions to provide cost-effective, value-added financial services tailored to your company's needs. Call CTBK at 716-630-2400. Again, 716-630-2400. Or go to ctbk.com to learn more about CTBK's outsourced solutions. Welcome to another edition of Tim Graham and Friends, brought to you by CTBK, CPAs and Business Consultants. This is the Friday before the Bills season opener against the Pittsburgh Steelers in Orchard Park on Sunday. We'll talk a little bit later on with Joel Staniszewski from a betting standpoint on that game. And he'll probably have some other suggestions on what to bet on this weekend. And as we've said many, many times on this show, you can make money with Joel's picks. And we're going to actually track them this year to make sure we can put a monetary figure on it this time. Not just the record, but we're going to take bets. And so that way we can say at different points, had you been betting X, you would have made Y by now. But before we get to Joel Staniszewski, and of course I'm here with Matthew Fairburn of The Athletic and also Jonah Bronstein of the New Bronstein Times. Matthew, is this your last time on the show? Do we know that? I mean, as a full-fledged F, explain to the people who maybe haven't seen on social media what is going on with you.
Yeah.
If you would, please.
Yeah. So I accepted a job a week ago today, almost around this time, to cover the Patriots for The Athletic. And so I'll be moving to New England at some point permanently, probably in the next month or two. I'll be back and forth in the meantime. So my time covering the Bills has effectively ended. I'll be at the Patriots-Dolphins game this weekend. And I'm really hoping that my time as a full-fledged F is not over. I mean, that would kind of break my heart, but
you have tenure. You are a full-fledged F, same as Mike Rodak, same as Joe Licata, but it could be different from now on. You have other obligations.
Yes. And, I think there will be times for us to link up and, do these shows. And I just don't know if people will need my full-time thoughts anymore, on matters that typically get discussed on the show. Although sometimes some of these shows aren't totally Buffalo focused. Some of them are broader. Gene, who helped sponsor the show, he tweeted at me saying he hopes I remain, an AF. And so, I feel like I have the backing of management here. So I'm probably going to weasel my way on as much as possible. And, the Patriots and Bills play one another twice a year and all that, and I've been telling a lot of people, it's been kind of overwhelming, all the attention and, the responses when the news was announced yesterday. And when I started sharing it earlier this week, I think, my wife and I and, our family are going to be back in the area enough that people aren't going to have a chance to miss us. And I plan to pop into this show enough that people don't have a chance to miss me, if any of them would even miss me at all. So, this place has become home for us. My wife's family's all from here. It's not a bad drive. We've been doing it a lot, since we started dating, with my family being from Massachusetts and a lot of them still being there. So we're going to be back quite a bit. We're going to be back in December for Monday Night Football. We'll probably spend a little extra time here with that lining up with the Patriots bye week. I got some parental leave to use, and my wife can work remotely. So, I imagine there'll be quite a bit of time spent in Western New York. It's crazy to think how much this place a lot of people are like, oh, you must be excited to go home. And yeah, there's an element of that, but feels like I'm leaving home in a lot of ways. And definitely wouldn't have thought that when I came here as a 22-year-old, fresh out of school, kind of just getting my feet wet. But it's a pretty special place, and it's going to be surprisingly hard to leave.
Jonah, I interrupted you earlier. You were saying something. I don't know if you had a thought to finish there.
My thought was that not only is he an F of the show, but he's an MF of the show.
The MF. That's true.
Thank you for letting me make that point.
Yeah, right. I think I stepped on your line, so I wanted just to clear a path there because it's a winner. It's a winner of a line. So Matthew, how do you dig into this then? The Patriots, as you mentioned, are about to start their season again. They open with the Dolphins. You're going to be at that game, as you mentioned, but I guess what's your thought process on switching beats? You have this built up knowledge on the Bills, and yes, you do get to use that as a foundation, and you will be leaning on a lot of that, some of the same sources that you've had regarding, whether it be agents, experts, analysts, ideas that have worked that you can carry over to this Patriots beat. But it is a totally new team. Can you share your thoughts and how you're sorting through that?
Yeah, apologies if you can hear the dog in the background. It wouldn't be
Hudson always has a place
farewell
on this
episode.
Are you bringing the dog or leaving it behind like Andrew Cuomo?
No, he is very much, we have thought about him a lot, probably, over the top amount in this move, in terms of our accommodations there and activities that we're going to, have to, include him in to make sure the transition is smooth. But yeah, it's kind of a daunting task starting a new beat, right? Like, you've done it a few times in your career, Tim. Like, it's weird to have 7 years under my belt in one place and kind of start over somewhere new. But I do think, like you said, a lot of the strategies, a lot of the sourcing, a lot of the idea generating translates from one to the next. It's still a football team. It's still, an NFL team. A lot of people during the process of talking about this job were warning me about the lousy access in New England and, how tough it is to crack in and break news. But in a way, the Bills are a team that's very good with access, and Brandon Beane has certainly been extremely helpful over the years, always open to a good story idea and talking about stuff. But a lot of the best stories, when I look back at, my time at The Athletic, a lot of it is stuff that, you're calling people that aren't in the building, right? You're finding different ways to tell stories. And I think that's really the foundation of what I do. And I hope that will translate. A lot of the access in New England is canned stuff. And I think in the time of COVID, that's been the case for a lot of sports, is you're going to get group access and you're going to get stuff on Zoom or WebEx in the case of the Patriots. So it's like, how do you break away from that? And, like you said, there's, agents and various sources, and, the telephone's a powerful thing. You get up and call people that you haven't even met and, that want to tell a story. And, there's creative ways into every angle. And I think this era of Patriots football in particular is going to be pretty fascinating. They've got a young quarterback. I've got plenty of experience, with that, and all the story angles that, kind of spring from having a young quarterback developing, but also just this era of Bill Belichick's career, how long it will go, what happens afterwards. I find it to be, one of the most interesting stories in football whenever it does come to be. And I think,
how are you gearing up mentally to cover Bill Belichick? Because there's a mystique there, and I think it's probably not as bad. And I have actually, in a different way than a beat writer, but I covered Belichick for 3 years, technically, when I was covering the AFC East at ESPN. I actually had pretty good success in communicating through with the organization and about that. But there's a there's a reputation there that I'm sure is intimidating to when you think I have to go deal with this every day now.
Yeah,
I at least I had 3 other teams that could maybe that I could concentrate on. I didn't have to get frustrated that I couldn't, that I didn't have Bill Belichick's cell number. Whereas I've had other coaches' cell numbers. But the idea of every day has to be a different thing.
Yeah, it's an interesting dynamic, I think, because I think probably the most like direct impact it will have is just, and not that I don't think I was not this way with Sean McDermott or Brian Dable or other coaches, that I've dealt with, but it's clear that the right type of question can get answer out of Bill Belichick. And I feel like that will be a puzzle every day to figure out how to ask questions, what types of questions to ask. He's not as dry and as uninformative as, people make him out to be. You just kind of have to, like you said, communicate with him in the right way and kind of, find the right in and the right, topic to get him going. And you can't lean on, and, it's not really my strategy or style anyways, to lean on whatever the coach says in a press conference or whatever players say in press conferences as the crux of your coverage anyways. But certainly the dynamic, the back and forth is going to be important to, extracting information and, talking to people around the team and stuff like that. So yeah, there's a certain mystique to it, but as I explained, it's another dynamic that people warned me about with the team is, it's a completely different beast dealing with Belichick. I didn't have the warmest, fuzziest relationship with Sean McDermott, over the last few years. So, and he's not super informative in press conference settings either. So I think that was a little bit of training for how to work around it. Obviously, there won't be a Brandon Bean in New England. Some guy won the Horrigan Award. He's about as good with the media as you can be. But I don't know. I found a lot of joy over the last few years telling stories. I had an old college professor tell me, I was working on a profile of Gary Pinkel. I had been assigned before they played Toledo. And, I asked, that's where Gary Pinkel used to work. Old Mizzou coach, came from Toledo, worked there with Nick Saban. They were hosting Toledo, and it was like, this was going to be our preview section story. And, I asked the Mizzou SID, you think, I could get Gary, one-on-one for a while to talk about this. And he's like, well, he only talks about the next opponent. And, my deadline was, earlier than that. So it was like, well, my editor was just like, who cares? Gary Pinkel's not that interesting. He doesn't say anything. Like, go talk to some other people about Gary Pinkel. And, I had fun with stories like that where, somebody won't talk to everybody around that person, or as many people around that person as you can, and try to tell stories that way, find interesting angles, interesting things like that. So it'll be an interesting dynamic with Belichick, but I also think the way we do things at The Athletic makes it so that I don't need to fret too much about the day-to-day interactions with Bill Belichick as much as I do finding interesting stories and teaching people stuff about their team.
Did you happen to talk to Gary Pinkel's cousins that live in Buffalo?
I didn't know that was a connection of his. I had fun with that Toledo story with Gary, on Gary Pinkel. Gary was an interesting fellow. Quite the ball coach for the Tigers over the years, but he became a lot more, open to talking and, saying interesting things once he retired.
Well, it's a big sports weekend. Obviously it's, well, wait, let me not transition to my next segment yet, because that was, we were talking about your departure, and then we started having a journalism discussion, and it no longer felt like we were talking about your departure. So let me go back and with some thoughts. So number one is somebody with familiarity on that beat, and having worked with a lot of the people on that beat, I know that you're going to go out there and do awesome work, and you are going to be missed here quite a bit. And that obviously, yes, we do still have this connection, and you'll be on the podcast and we'll see each other. And, when I'm out there and you're out here and all that good stuff, but you will be missed in the daily coverage, the day-to-day, constant presence. And I think sometimes writers can get taken for granted when they've been so good for so long that, I think people probably got a little too used to the fact that Matthew Fairburn was always going to have something good online that day. And now that that's going away, people are really going to notice and miss it. And, but I'm also thrilled you're not leaving the company. So at least we get to still be teammates. But we'll save a more emotional or teary goodbye for some other time, because you will be going back and forth for the next month, which I'm sure is going to be thrilling.
Oh yeah, lots of time on I'm going to have to get used to not calling it the 90 and calling it the Pike, but it's kind of both. The Thruway, boring drive, quick drive, but a boring drive.
Yeah, not my favorite.
But
anyway, we're going to miss you. I know it's not, you're going to be back on the show, but I know that obligations and scheduling and all that type of stuff, it just won't be as easy to make it as a regular. So you got a lot on your plate, and I know you'll, as the kids say, crush it.
That's what I'm going to miss a lot about being here and, being on the beat every day, and surprising amount of, you get, everything's kind of a whirlwind when you're making decisions like these, and you're hoping for clarity as much as you can get it. And it's kind of impossible until you decide, right? And take a jump and, see what's out there. And that's when you realize, like, oh crap, there's a lot of like random little things and, people, that I'm going to miss. And it's comforting that, like you said, I'm staying at the company. We're going to be back a bunch. It's in the division. As far as change goes, it's not as drastic as it could be.
It should be noted too, because, and Jonah and I were talking about this a few nights ago. Yes, the Bills are a better team than the Patriots right now, but let me be clear. This is a major promotion, because we are in the media. Boston is a huge media market. Yes, the Patriots might not even make the playoffs this year. And while the Bills are a Super Bowl contender, yes, Matthew might be missing out on a chance to cover a Super Bowl team, all that stuff. However, this is a promotion, and it speaks to what the Athletic thinks of Matthew's work, that there is an opening on the Patriots beat, and they wanted Matthew they're moving Matthew physically, financially, the whole thing, to one of the 3 or 4 premier beats in the entire NFL.
Yeah, I think, I'm kind of glad you brought it up, because there was a lot of, like I said, a lot of attention yesterday, a lot of reaction, most of which I'm just like, I'm not comfortable with. I think anybody who has gotten to know me over the years, just kind of not my deal. Like, it was kind of overwhelming. A lot of, really nice things that people said. A lot of the Boston folks already in my mentions, ready to mix it up, which is fine. I'm going to have to develop some of that Tim Graham wit on the comebackers.
Yeah,
and
no, don't do that. I think you can get away with it in Buffalo. I don't know if you can get away with it there. Yeah, you probably can. Tom Curran does it. I think. Yeah, you
got to be able to,
you're right,
push back once in a while and show them that you're not going to be a pushover. But yeah, it's weird, because when I started this, it seemed like there was a career ladder, right? And, the idea of certain jobs or whatever, and so much has just got shuffled up. And, you and I talk about this a lot about, certain opportunities have popped up over the years, and you never know what the right thing to do is. And, yeah, sure, I'll still be on a beat. Of course, there's people out there, I don't think many listeners of this show, but people out there that are like, oh man, I thought you were a thought you were a Bills fan or a Buffalo guy, and like you're going to the right, like what are you doing? And I mean, that's not how the job works, right? Like, you know, I will be, you know, as neutral on the Patriots as I was on the Bills. And I think there's just a part of me that thought if I didn't take the jump, I would have thought about it, you know, for a while. And, you know, having grown up there, interned there, the market is a beast. It's a different animal. The eyeballs, the exposure, no matter how good the team is. Like the Patriots are good, the Patriots are bad. There's still a huge story. And there's a part of me that thought like, oh man, the Bills are going to be in the spotlight this year. And I've got all this sourcing and I've, you know, built up a lot of these relationships. This could be also an opportunity. It was not an easy decision by any means. It just felt like the type of chance that doesn't come around a lot to kind of bet on yourself and see how you can hack it in the big market. And, you know, I think it's a huge credit to Bills fans and, you know, the readership here and everything that I even got this chance, because I took a chance on a 6-month part-time non-permanent job when I came out of college, and the response from Bills fans was strong enough that I got hired permanently. The Athletic noticed me, and now they're, you know, trusting me on a really important beat. So it's, you know, I just can't say enough about like what the last 7 years have done for my career, what working with you and all the talks the three of us have had on and off this podcast. Like I've just learned a lot, and I feel ready, a lot more ready for this than I would have, you know, 4 or 5 years ago. So we'll see what happens. It's going to be an interesting move. It's going to be a tough transition, probably more so personally than professionally, but it will be, you know, that's some of the things that were rattling around in my head as far as like the professional opportunity was just like, that is, you know, as far as sports markets go, I don't know, it's got to be top 3, top 4. It's up there. And, you know, I think the challenge and the opportunity was pretty exciting.
Yeah, I don't blame you one bit. I can't be upset about it other than that I'm going to miss working with you, but it's one of those jobs you got to go after when it comes up. Especially at this stage, you don't have kids in school yet and all that stuff, all those things that cement where you are.
That was a big thing too. It's like our son is 2 months old. Moving with a 2-month-old, not an exciting proposition, but we kind of figured if we're going to take a chance, this is when we're going to take a chance. And, you know, we kind of have that 4 to 5 year window to figure out where we want, you know, to put our boy in school and, you know, where we want to be permanent home. But it's been here or there for us. What was that?
You are bringing the baby with you?
That's the plan so far. You know, yeah, the baby and the dog are coming with. It'd be a lot smoother of a move without a baby and a dog, but it's we're pot committed there. So you know, it's it's, you know, it gives, we always thought, you know, after wandering eyes at different jobs and things like that, that it was like, we're going to end up in Buffalo or New England just because of family and friends in both areas. And it was like, well, if we want clarity, the only way to do it is to go and to try it and to see what it's like and try out the job. And you know, best case scenario is it's a long, fruitful, you know, good place for us to live. But I think, as probably a lot of people know, a lot of people listening to this podcast, it's like you included. I mean, Buffalo has a way of keeping its claws in people. So, you know, we'll be back a lot, and, you know, it'll always feel like home here.
Well, let's end the discussion there. We're going to talk to Joel Staniszewski about betting on Steelers at Bills on Sunday. And then we'll come back after Joel and we'll wrap things up. I want to talk about UB playing at Nebraska, some stadium discussion that Jonah proposed that I think is interesting. And in a couple other odds and ends. But Matthew, again, thank you for being such a great F. You are a permanent F, and I'm grateful for the friendship and the team work, and I'm looking forward to seeing what happens next.
Much love.
The Force-Fed Lies remix. That means only one thing. Joel Staniszewski is on the line from Vegas to talk to us about Sunday's season opener, Steelers at Bills in Orchard Park. Joel Staniszewski, thanks for joining us and starting this ride yet again of analyzing these Bills games from a betting perspective. Thanks again for doing this.
Thanks for having me. It's always a pleasure to be here with this crew of dudes.
Looking forward to charting these picks all year.
I'm looking forward too.
Yeah, we're looking, and we'll quantify how much money Joel Staniszewski can make for you. This is not a paid service. He is not here to tout. He does not have a 1-900 number or a website. The guy's not even on Twitter. Joel does this out of the goodness of his experienced betting heart, as a devoted Buffalo Bills fan from Sloan who went to Buff State and went out to Las Vegas and has had a career as an analyst, a handicapper, an odds maker. And here we are, 2021 about to start. Joel, I'll set the stage for you by giving out the numbers. The Bills are 6.5-point favorites over the Steelers. The total 48.5. It opened Bills 5.5. So obviously the public likes Buffalo in this game quite a bit, but the total has actually gone down. Before we get into the spread, why do you think the total has gone down? Because you have a high flying team, and the Steelers, even if you think Ben Roethlisberger's shot, to have it go down 2.5 points is interesting to me.
Yeah, I would be leery of the opening number. A lot of times books, so when you look at a third-party site like Vegas Insider or anything that's going to give you those numbers, the second anyone puts a number up, that's what the opening number is. So there's times where they can put a number up and then they can put it on, turn it on so that it shows up, and then they want to wait and see where the offshore numbers settle, where the other books come in, and then open it up. So if it says 51, I mean, that's kind of what you have to go with when you're looking at opening numbers. But that seems really high. So from what I've seen, the numbers of bets that are coming in are more on the over. So I would assume it was just the number settling, not necessarily that they put that up and that was the starting number where they were taking bets on.
Gotcha. Okay, so what do you think about this Bills game at 6.5 right now? Steelers coming in to Highmark Stadium, some question marks after the way things ended for them, losing the last, I think, 5 out of 6 after going deep into the season undefeated. What's your sense on this number 6.5?
I think that's the right number. I tried to go through most, if not all, of the games, and I picked who I liked and what number I liked, like side and total, for literally every game, just based upon looking at the number, not digging into it, not looking at any metrics or anything like that, just based upon first glance what I thought. And this particular game, I thought the number was right at 6.5. I thought the total was close at 48.5, which is where it's been pretty much hanging out for a while now. My first thought when I saw it was Bills and under. And I mentioned that last week, even though we weren't talking about week 1, we were talking about futures and whatnot, but I did mention Bills, and I think I might have even said under, and I still feel that same way after going and doing some research and some kind of looking through, last couple of games. I know, as I've mentioned in the past, betting week 1 is difficult. You can base it upon, you have a little bit more information this year than you did last week with training camps and preseasons and actually rookies and second year players now getting a full camp, full off season. So I think you have a little bit more information this year than you did last year, but starting off trying to pick games before you see the health of Ben Roethlisberger or Carson Wentz. When you see, these players that have been injured, even Dak Prescott yesterday. So when you see these players playing that are questionable-ish with their injuries and coming off of and getting older in their ages and getting longer in the league. Emmanuel Sanders, that's another one. Like, if you think he's our number 2 receiver, you're not necessarily sure how much he's going to play or if he's going to play at all. So you kind of got to take that into account. Now, granted, a receiver, with the exception of like Calvin Johnson, doesn't affect the spread, but it could affect how you view the team performing without that player.
What information have you been looking at in this game that gets you to to take the Bills to go ahead and give Pittsburgh 6.5 points and the under?
So looking at last couple of games, last 7 games, Pittsburgh was 2-5 against the spread. Bills are 9-2 against the spread their last 11 games. Now, both teams in their recent history tells you that they're over teams. And as I've mentioned in the past, I'm not a huge totals better. I'm going to put in my
we have to give the people what they want.
And we're going to track it, of course. But it's not something that I'm as confident in as I am when I pick sides. Bills are 7-0 their last 7 games at home. I just feel that Pittsburgh is on the back end of being a dominant team, and the Bills are on the upswing of being a dominant team at home. Home opener, full crowd. It's going to be insane there. So I think that's another thing, especially when you're factoring in Najee Harris, a rookie, playing in his first NFL game, and it's going to be a madhouse. Now, granted, he's played in big, huge capacity college football games, but I feel like once you take it to that next level, it becomes a whole new thing. And I just think it's going to be harder for Pittsburgh to run the ball. And I don't know if Ben Roethlisberger has the arm talent anymore, and he definitely doesn't have the leg talent to get out of there and shrug off sacks and get some positive yards on the ground. So I just feel like the Steelers, as we saw them, I don't know, we'll say 10 years ago when they were just dominant, I feel like that's how the Bills are right now. And the Steelers just aren't as a complete a team as they were last year. And we saw what happened when the Bills and the Steelers played last year. So I just think that the Bills as a whole have gotten better, and Pittsburgh's just kind of stayed the same and kind of probably dropped a little bit in the talent department with age.
Joel, as we look at, I know you usually give us some other picks, from around the league, but as you know, Tim is now threatening to track these picks and keep track of your profit and what you're doing for the people. It might be helpful, and this might just be selfishly as somebody who may follow these picks this year, may or may not. How do you go about, what's your strategy for your bankroll and how you choose how many games to bet each week and where you kind of allocate your funds? I imagine as somebody who does it regularly like you do, there's some long-term strategy. You talk all the time when we talk about totals, how you hate having that money tied up. So how do you kind of strategize going into each season and then going into each week?
So I think with going into the weeks and betting week by week, when you look at, like I said, when you look at the games and you think, okay, well, this team's going to win. This is just based upon feel. When I look at these two names side by side, I think this team is going to win. Then when you go in and you do some digging and you look at simulation sites, you look at ELO tracking, you track injuries, you track new coaching staffs in place. You're talking about rookies in bigger roles. You kind of factor all of those things in. And then sometimes those games that you thought were an easy pick are now going the other way. So I think that the best way to do it is if you pick and you go through and you pick your games and you look at what games you think are an advantage for you as the bettor, and you like 4 games, then you bet 4 games. If you like 7 games, then you bet 7 games. Because if you pick 7 games in your head, but then you're like, well, I only max out at 4 bets, and those are the 4 you play, and you go 2 and 2, but the other 3 also win, then you're going to be mad at yourself because you should have played them all. And then the next week, you're going to be chasing that money, and you're going to like 4 games, but you're going to think, you know what, let me throw 3 more in there to try to get that money back that I lost last week. And that's just a really bad habit to get into, where you're chasing money. So I think the main thing is set your bankroll, whether that's season-long bankroll or a weekly bankroll or monthly, however you want to bet it. Bet in the same increments that you always want to bet in, $100, $200, $12, whatever that is. Bet that and be consistent. Consistency is the key here. When you're trying to find what you think is an advantage, you're getting the best of a number, you bet it, you bet your same amount per game, and then you just kind of let it ride. And don't look at it from a day-to-day or a week-to-week, or I lost these early games, I'm going to double down on these late games. I've lost these games, I'm going to bet more on Monday night. You know, from working in sports books, I've had owners and directors that are screaming because we lost $1 million on a game. They're just going berserk. And they're not looking at big picture. Even these are the owners of these companies, and they're going berserk because we lost a bunch of money on a Sunday night game. But we're saying, yeah, we lost $1 million on this game, and that's unfortunate. But we also won $7 million earlier today. So don't worry about one game. Don't worry about 1 week. You're talking, look at it big picture, monthly, season long, and just be consistent. And consistency will keep you afloat.
Yeah, every now and then
set you free.
No, I'm sorry, Matthew, I stepped on you there. What was that?
Consistency will set you free. And it's nice to have, what Joel is preaching is responsible gambling, right? We like people to enjoy their vices responsibly on this show. So I appreciate him, underscoring that.
Now, I might preach responsibility and being consistent, but I'm also not perfect. So I can recall just a couple of months ago betting like the Dodgers and for like $100, and they lost. And I was like, you lost like as a $2 favorite, and I invested $200 to win. So I'm like, you know what I'm going to do? Just to prove myself wrong, I'm going to bet $400 the next game. And guess what? They lost the next game. So by the third game, I'm investing like $1,200 to get back all the money that I lost. And I know you're not supposed to do this. I'm well aware, but I'm also like just a stubborn asshole. So I'm just like, no, I'm going to keep betting until I get all my money back. And then, of course, eventually you're going to win if you have enough bankroll. So finally it hits, and I was like, all right, fine. Now I'm going to take a break and just not bet any games, for a couple of months. And I did just sprinkled a couple in here and there. There's a UFC fighter who's from Las Vegas, and I see him around a lot. He's friends with some of my friends. He just fought this past weekend. Won as a plus $1.45 favorite, so that was a nice little cash there. So just, and again, still being consistent. So as I said, there's a UFC fighter that I'm acquaintances of, friend of a friend, $1.45 favorite. Saw him looking totally jacked, more than I'd seen him before, as a $1.45 favorite, and I thought, I could bet a lot here and try to really start my football season off strong. But I also knew consistency is key. Don't get crazy. Don't go on some $500 bet when you're a $100 bettor. If it hits, great, that's awesome. But if it doesn't, now you're just chasing. And so, don't want to chase. Scared money is losing money, so don't do that.
I like Joel's strategy. He saw a UFC fighter looking totally jacked, so he went for it. As if, there's a lot of slobs walking around the UFC. I'm sure the guy he was going up against was slamming beers and looking real soft. I don't know. But,
And
hey,
like
whatever works.
3 days after he won that fight, he came to see the end of everything playing a show. So I can't hate on him at all. You know, it was awesome.
Where do you factor crowd noise at places like Kansas City, Seattle, New Orleans, Buffalo? But after last year, you kind of had to remove home field from, well, maybe it was a lighter consideration than in the past. And I know at most places it doesn't matter, but there are those handful of stadiums where home field really does factor in. So how do you look at that, Joel? What's your general thought heading into this season where, you know, the fans are going to be maybe a little more lubed up and crazy?
Yeah, as we've mentioned in the past, traveling is a big thing. You know, going from West Coast to East Coast, traveling 2,500 miles versus 150 miles, huge difference. Playing in these stadiums that you know is going to be really loud. Yeah, of course, Buffalo is going to be really loud. It's probably top 5 loudest stadiums, I would say. But also keep in mind that there's going to be 20% Steelers fans there too. So with a short drive, a short travel, you know, you have to also factor in that type of stuff too, especially like now the Las Vegas Raiders. Every game that they play, half of the crowd is going to be for the other team, at least. It started that way with the Golden Knights. When I went to see the Golden Knights against the Sabres in their inaugural season, it was like 10 games into the season, and more than half of the arena was in Sabres gear. And like I was walking around like feeling like I was in Buffalo, like I was just seeing everybody in Sabres gear. And as of course their wins went up and they continued to be a really good team, the fans kind of came around and became more Vegas Golden Knights fans. But you know, that's a thing. So people will travel from Pittsburgh. It's a short drive, 2.5 hours from Pittsburgh to Buffalo. So there'll be some Steelers fans there, but it'll definitely be loud. And a really, really loud crowd can affect the other team, you know, a couple false starts here and there, wasting a timeout because they couldn't get a play call in, you know, just little things here and there. But there's a lot of times where a close game, a little thing is a huge difference. You know, you just think about one false start on a 3rd and 10 when they're backed up in their own, you know, inside their own 20. That's going to be a huge swing of field position. So these are just things that I think you just kind of always factor in. You don't sit there and think like, well, they're in Seattle, it's going to be loud, they're going to have to win, because it's not always the case. But if you're factoring crowd noise, you're factoring the Patriots flying across the country, you're factoring, you know, it's one of those things that kind of adds up to kind of make you feel more comfortable with your bet that you've decided on, but not necessarily a breaking point. Like, yeah, this is the bet I'm going to make solely because of crowd noise.
One thing to note with the crowd Sunday is that in many years, there's been 10, 20,000 Steeler fans at games in Buffalo between these two teams. But being the home opener, the way tickets are sold, the first full stadium game in 2 years, I think you're not going to see nearly as many yellow towels in that crowd that you would have in really any other year that Pittsburgh played.
I know some teams, they in order to buy tickets, you have to, like, your area, your zip code has to be within X miles of the stadium. And I don't know if that was just in hockey or if that was in football.
Yeah, that's
also.
generally that's a playoff thing. Then you get into the playoffs. I think some colleges have tried that, but that's not something that the NFL does.
I think with this game, it has more to do with the weather. There's going to be more tickets on the secondary market for a Buffalo game in November or December than the home opener. You know,
For sure.
Agreed. You can buy single tickets.
Definitely.
Yeah, and people have been waiting so long to get into that stadium that if you got a ticket, they're not going to sell it. Although I was just talking to a gentleman last night who's a season ticket holder, and he's torn. He's going to go to the game, but he feels that if he were to sell his 2 tickets, it would pretty much pay for the rest of his season. It's the hockey. It's the what you Sabres fans are used to doing, getting their season tickets, selling off those Toronto Maple Leaf and Canadiens games. And it funds the endeavor for the other 40 or 36 games or however many. Yeah, your Steelers ticket is probably going to go for a couple of bucks if you want to sacrifice being there. If you
And
can,
why wouldn't you do that? Why wouldn't you want to pay for the whole season when there's 8 more games, possibly playoff games?
Because they want to be there. I mean, I think it's just,
like, why do you buy tickets, right? Like, I think it all comes down to the individual. Like, there's probably a lot of people thinking this might be the most anticipated home opener in 25 years. That'd be safe to say. And post-COVID, I mean, not post, hard to say post-COVID since we're still kind of slogging through it, but first time the stadium will be full since 2019. It'll be a memorable day at the stadium to some. That means something. That's part of why they have the tickets. To others, perhaps like Jonah, it would be like, well, I can turn a quick little profit here and pay for the rest of my games. I mean, I think there's people in New England going through that with the game that Tom Brady comes back, right? You could get a ridiculous amount of money for that Bucks Patriots ticket, but do you also I feel like if you're a season ticket holder, part of what you do that for is for the memories and being able to say you're there at these important moments in football history, and that's going to be one of them. So I'm sure it's a conversation most people have. You're sitting there saying, well, my first game of the year it's not going to be that Steelers game that everybody's all jacked up about, but when the Washington football team comes to town, I'm there. It's like, well, that's a little bit tougher, so I get it on both ends.
You could bankroll your whole betting bankroll with selling these tickets.
You can get great. My brother and sister and we're always texting, and we have tickets to the Texans game, and we were talking just last night about how the ticket prices for the Bills are like average ticket prices like over $400. So I asked them, like, what's the dollar amount that we could sell our tickets for that you would sell it for? And my sister said 1,000, and I said I'm probably at between 1,000 and 1,500. Like, if I could sell my ticket that I bought for $150 for 1,500, I mean, I probably would.
I think it could get up there because it's the return of David Culley. It's the fans are going to be
Tyrod
in the lather to see David Culley come back. The big grudge match game. No. That'll be a slaughter. That's that game that's a slaughter. That's like Penn State UB, or whatever, when it back years ago when that game used to be played. That's like the non-conference college season opener.
Jonah does make a good point though. You could sell your Steelers ticket, make what? I don't know. How much profit you think you could make on your Steelers ticket? Let's say $500. That might be conservative. Put it on the Bills -6.5 and the under, and now you're getting paid to go to Bills games this year. It's like Joel's Super Bowl bet. You just
exactly
bet the week one game and you're going for free.
When I hit that UFC ticket, I put a little bit more on the Bills. It's up to 12-1 now. My first bet was at 11-1. Now I got it at 12-1. So
where do you think you are all time in betting on the Bills? Are you ahead or behind in that transaction?
In futures, clearly behind. In games, I would say I'm probably ahead. Not by a lot because I don't bet them a lot, as we've talked about before. I don't want to lose money and heartbreak at the same time. But I would say I'm probably up. I don't keep that close of tracks. I keep track based upon how much I deposited into my account and how much I have in my account now. So if I have more, then I'm on a winning streak. So I'll keep that going.
What other games do you want to pick for us this weekend, Joel?
I got actually a lot more. I wasn't expecting to have that many more, but I have it on my phone because I took a screenshot of the tickets before I clicked them. I like the New York, New Jersey football Giants at I'm not perfectly prepared.
You had all week, Joel.
I'm sorry.
While you're looking that up, I'll squeeze in a little statistical. I don't know this company, but I received a press release yesterday regarding Bills Week 1 ticket prices. The average ticket price right now, just to get into they call it the get in price. So it's averaged on every seat, $203. But the average, I'm sorry, that's all season. But as it stands now, but the average price for the home opener is $274, 88% higher than the next priciest game against Washington football team, which is at 145. But last year season opener, or I'm sorry. Well, wait, that can't be right. I'm trying to think. What were there weren't any fans until
This is brought to you by Amherst Pizza and Ale House, by the way.
right.
Tim's been hanging out at the ale house too much.
See now, yeah, I'm trying to squeeze it while Joel looks for his information. I'm reading this press release and I don't understand.
I just needed a second. I didn't need you to.
I'm sorry. Go ahead. I'm sorry, Joel. I'm ready for you now. You want the Giants?
Giants +3.
All right.
Minnesota Vikings -3.
Uh-huh.
Lions +8. Colts +3. Titans -3. A lot of games. Jeepers. See this consistency though. I might go 1-4 in these games, but got to be consistent because if I only pick one or two and then they all hit, then I'm going to be bummed. So I'm going to be consistent. I'm going to play every game. I'm going to give you every game that I like, and I'm going to play every game that I like. And we're going to
5 picks this week. I'm sorry, 6 picks this week, counting the Bills. So to recap, take the Bills, go ahead and give the Steelers 6.5 points, go under 48.5, then get a pen. Giants, you're taking 3 points. Vikings, you're giving 3 points. Lions, you're getting 8 points. Colts, you are getting 3 points. Tennessee, you are giving 3 points. So 6 picks right there. For betting, for quantitative purposes, we will be betting $100 on each game. And we will occasionally give updates to say that had you bet the $100 on Joel's picks, you would be up or hopefully not down, but it could happen. But it hasn't happened on this show. And however many years we've been doing this, Joel always has a nice winning percentage. And it's because he doesn't pick every game. I think that's kind of the key, right? He's picking the select games that he likes. And we are not charging you for these. This is all gratis. This is all one of the biggest F things that can be done on this show. Joel Staniszewski, a great F to Western New York, giving you his expertise free of charge. Joel, thanks for this. Looking forward to moving forward and through the weeks and charting these, and grateful as always.
Thanks. Talk to you all soon. Go Bills.
Thanks as always to Joel Staniszewski. Before we go, though, we are going to talk about a few other items, empty out the notebook here as we head into the weekend. And as mentioned, as you may have heard the promo during the show, great sports weekend for Western New York. A lot going on. Obviously, there's the Bills game, but UB at Nebraska. I would urge you to go to Amherst Pizza and Ale House to check that out. Amherst Pizza and Ale House, of course, located in Williamsville, right off the 990. You can catch all the college and pro games there. They have a fleet of televisions, indoor, out on the patio. Also great to get your takeout at 625-7100. One more time, that's 625-7100. Amherst Pizza and Ale House, awarded Great Place to Watch the Games by ESPN a few years back. And they have, not this weekend, I don't think. It's also the place you want to go to watch your pay-per-view MMA and boxing matches. Pretty intimate setting there. It's not like some of the chain restaurants where you go to watch the pay-per-view and maybe you'll see a server, maybe you won't. This is a tightly...
Maybe you'll see Josh Allen at some of those chains.
Right.
Maybe Rodak is the reason that Amherst Pizza and Ale House made it onto ESPN's places to watch the game. Did you ever think about that?
No, is he a big pizza and ale house guy?
I don't
Rodak?
know. He's just a big Buffalo guy, so I feel like he could have gotten some sway there. And he wasn't far from the Ale House.
Did he write that ESPN line?
I don't. I'll have to go back. I'll have to dig that up. I'll dig that up and I'll find it. We'll expose. We'll find out exactly what year that was. But ESPN did a thing on sports bars, and Amherst Pizza and Ale House was chosen as the Buffalo selection. And I wholeheartedly endorse it. The reason, again, like Joel Staniszewski with his bets, he actually wagers on his picks. He will be putting his money to it. Amherst Pizza and Ale House would not be a sponsor if I didn't go in there and happen to talk to the owner who wanted to be a sponsor. So feel free to come to Amherst Pizza and Ale House and have a chance at an in-person interaction with Tim Graham.
This is definitely a case where the sponsor knows that no matter what happens, it's making money here, I think, off of Tim Graham. It's made enough money off of Tim Graham that it's comfortable enough to sponsor the show.
Yes, the Amherst Pizza and Ale House is not just Tim Graham, but the Graham family. We get takeout from there all the time. And he's turned a profit, a large profit. UB at Nebraska, Jonah. What are your thoughts on this game? UB, yes, talented team. Nebraska, not that great but still, I'm guessing Nebraska has to recruit players that could just throttle UB in this game. But
well, it's a Big Ten team, Power Five, so there's definitely a difference in the level of players and recruiting classes and talent, even with the transfer portal and how that sort of smooths some of those things out in some ways. But it's not a very good Nebraska team. Nebraska is not only not ranked, but not receiving votes in the top 25. Hasn't been ranked in 3 seasons since the beginning of 3 seasons ago under Scott Frost. Hasn't had a winning record yet under Scott Frost. But they are favored by between 13 and 14 points as the line is now. It opened around 11. So a home game with 80,000+ people in a sold-out stadium is a different environment than any of these UB players are really used to, even the few of them that were on the field when UB played at Penn State 2 years ago. And in that game, it was a close game for a half, and then UB got blown out in the second half. That was more of a 22-point spread. So it does sort of reflect a little bit of this Buffalo team being better than it was a few years ago and more capable of winning a game like this. But UB's only beaten a Big Ten team once before. It was a Rutgers team in 2018 that was 1-11. So they've never beaten a good Power Five on the road guarantee game. I hear they're getting $1.3 million as a guaranteed payment for playing this game. So it'd be a tremendous opportunity for Buffalo to go in and get this win if they're able to. Even though it's a 14-point spread, I've seen various power rankings, things mostly coming out of last year's results, Football Outsiders and things like that, where these are 2 equal teams. And Nebraska has the home field advantage, but that might be the only real advantage they have in terms of talent and productivity back from last season.
Yeah, that game's going to be on the Big Ten Network at 3:30 on Saturday. As Jonah mentioned, UB 14-point underdog, opened at 11. So a lot of people were banging on Nebraska early. Seems to be that's where all the money's going. I
pretty impressive in that first game. I mean, it was against Wagner, which isn't a good team. They've only won like 2 games overall over the last several seasons, but UB scored 69 points. That's the most points of any team in the country. Their 62-point win margin was the biggest of any team in the country. They're not the only team playing in FCS in the first game of the year. I think 5 or 6 different FCS teams won games. So they haven't been tested yet, but Buffalo looked pretty impressive in their first time seeing them under Mo Linguist.
Let me ask you this, Jonah, about UB. Which program do you think will have more success moving on from its esteemed coach? And I know we've already gotten a bit of a preview of what the basketball team has done without Nate Oates, kind of our first chance to see what the football team will do without Lance at the helm. But long term, which program do you think is better positioned to handle the transition and have more success?
Well, the big difference there is that the basketball team ended up hiring Jim Weitzel, who was an assistant, and they did not have any players transfer out. They did lose recruits that had committed already and had to re-recruit that recruiting class, but nobody transferred. So they brought back the same team with largely the same coaching staff and a lot of continuity. And they haven't won as many games and haven't been nationally ranked like they were in Nate Oates last season, but they have been a 20-win team and near the top of the MAC and was in the MAC championship game last year. So they've sustained a pretty good level of success that wasn't top 25 level. Now, Buffalo football was ranked in the top 25 at most of last season and in the final poll last year, but lost the entire coaching staff or had turnover for the entire coaching staff, had 12 different players in the transfer portal. About 6 of them were starters. About 6 players went to Kansas with Lance Leipold and his staff, and had a short off season of reintroducing the new coaching staff and the new systems and the new transfer players that came in. So there's a lot less continuity, but they could sustain the success better, as well or better. I mean, in a simple way, if Buffalo wins this game at Nebraska, next week they play at home against Coastal Carolina, that's currently number 17, who, by the way, plays at Kansas tonight, and that game's on television. You know, you win this game.
That is a neat wrinkle. I want just real quick, I want to mention that Coastal Carolina is kind of is going to be prepared over. You know, they're going to have. I'm sure they've been watching UB's film to get ready for this game because they want to see what Lance Leipold is going to do strategically. So they're going to have 2 weeks of preparing for UB players.
Right, and it's a good scouting opportunity for Buffalo too to see how they play against a team where they're going to know a little bit about Lance Leipold and the players and how they run things, and seeing how that matchup plays out, and maybe even get insight from former Buffalo coaches who might come back with scouting reports and tips to help them prepare for next week's game. I don't know if that'll happen, but I think there's still some good relationships that could allow for that. But so Buffalo wins, if they were to win at Nebraska, and if they were to win at home against a ranked Coastal Carolina team, they might be ranked in the top 25 as soon as 2 weeks from now at 3-0 with those kind of wins. And if they're not, they'll be close. They'll be receiving votes and maybe taking Coastal Carolina's place as one of those group of 5 teams that's ranked. I don't know if they necessarily will pull that off, but the big impression I got from that first game, even factoring in the strength of the opponent being very poor, was this team looked as good as they were last year. They have most of the same players back, the confidence, their ability. They don't have too many young players out there. They don't have positional weaknesses that you would really point to as a problem so far right now. So I think you're really looking at a continuation of the success the team had last year, but with, you lose seniors every year, but with some transfers and some seniors going to the NFL. They have 3 players on NFL rosters that were on last year's team. So that's going to be a little bit of a hit in the talent. But to answer Matt's question, I think Mo Linguist and his staff has a tremendous opportunity to keep that momentum going and maybe even take it further. But I don't. If they do win a lot of games, I don't know if that staff will be here very long. So it's going to be a more continual cycle if they get even better, especially if they go to a higher level. Whereas with basketball, they might have more long-term stability and continuity, even if they're not ranked number 12 in the country again with this coaching staff.
Jonah, I know that we also wanted to get to, you had some thoughts on high school sports here in Western New York, I guess across the state, because of all the different vaccination protocols and things. As things begin here, how do you think this is going to unfold as different mask mandates are happening? The schools, I mean, not necessarily around here, but around the country, schools are closing again, trying to recalibrate. Do you have any kind of insights as to what you think will happen in Western New York?
Well, I don't really know what will happen. I have a lot of, I wouldn't call it fears, but maybe anxieties about what could happen. I thought about it a lot in the context of this show and the conversations we've had about Bills players being vaccinated and the few that are not. And the percentages, when you look at that, the NFL is up over 92, or I think it's up to 93% vaccinated. The Bills are somewhere in the 80s, and that's considered low for an NFL team. And
Well, I'll just add an update there in my Q&A that I did with Brandon Bean that ran yesterday. He said they're now in the single digits of unvaccinated players. So
they're over 90%, the Bills.
So yeah, that's what he's saying. He's in the single digits. And he said, and the expression on his face, which can't really be captured in the Q&A, but he was like, his eyes bugged out, is like, we finally moved the needle. And it sounds to me is that maybe the shame that was heaped upon the team during the Isaiah McKenzie, Cole Beasley openly mocking being fined and that whole thing, maybe one more speech from the coach or somebody in the organization. It sounds like they at least took some steps in the right direction there. Sorry, I didn't want to interrupt, but I just wanted to give the update.
No, that's good. I'm glad to have the actual numbers, because that's excellent, actually, especially we thought when they cut down the roster that might lower the number because it seemed more high-profile starters were unvaccinated than ended the bench guys.
They do have a large practice squad too, and I assume that factors it. But it's also, they're not talking percentage. You know, Brandon Bean said single digit, so that's a maximum of 9 unvaccinated players, which even if you count it on the 53 is still an 84% ish vaccination rate. If you count the practice squad, it's higher than that, so pretty good. But go ahead.
All right. So what I mean is, even if you take that lowest number, let's say 81% was the number a week or two ago, and that was a lower number. That's still higher than the general population, the general adult population even. It's much higher than people in an NFL player's age group, below age 35. It's significantly higher than African-American and other minority peoples in that age group. So the NFL and the Bills have done a very good job of convincing players to get vaccinated that come from demographics or fall into demographics that are vaccine hesitant. And even though it's frustrating or there's a lot of hand wringing and we don't like when we see someone like Cole Beasley spreading vaccine misinformation, if the rest of the country was keeping pace with the NFL, we'd be in great shape. Now, I noticed as I went to a football game last week up in Wilson, and not to shame anybody in any particular town, but that's the game I went to. I didn't see anybody wearing masks. It was outdoors. There was no policy about whether you were vaccinated or not. You enter this way or leave that way, or really just no controls in that regard. And I don't think that's very common in any high school sports settings right now. You do have to wear masks indoors, which affects some sports, and other sports it does not. But if you look at vaccination rates among teenagers, even in New York, that's closer to 50%. It varies, I think, by area, but it's not anywhere near 70, 80% where we are with adults and things like that. But we also haven't had, policies in place where certain teams have to get tested before the games. You can't play unless everybody passes a test 72, 48 hours, whatever it is, before the game. Or the CDC did come out with some, I would say, soft recommendations that, recreation and youth sports should only be played or can only be safely played if everybody is vaccinated. And I don't think local and state jurisdictions are following that. And maybe they shouldn't. We had a year and a half, really, where high school sports have really been disrupted. And I'm not saying everything should be put on pause, but it was a little bit alarming to see these stricter policies about going to NFL games and college games and whether you're wearing masks or not. And then see at the high school level where there are a lot less vaccinated people, where there's children that can't even get vaccinated in a lot of these homes. And it does seem like maybe they're a little bit more cavalier about what these large groups of people can do and gather and be in each other's faces. And a lot of these policies were decided and set months ago before the Delta variant took hold. And we knew how much more transmissible the virus would be and become. The national case levels are higher than they've almost ever been.
Now we have to worry about the Mu variant and whatever.
Right, exactly.
We'll have Sigma, Chi Rho, and all that stuff coming behind it.
I do think a lot of the things that
Phi,
President
Chi,
Biden
Psi,
announced-
Omega.
Well, sure. I think a lot of the things that the president announced yesterday will help. In particular, daily testing or frequent rapid testing that people can do at home and can do on a daily basis if they want, or specifically maybe for a football game, everybody has to test the day before. That would help in a lot of situations. And I think the more testing and even wearing masks becomes part of our culture for the next couple months, will control the virus, along with more vaccinations. And maybe as we get into the winter, when everything does move indoors and it could be a more dangerous situation, will be in a better situation, hopefully at least locally. But I don't know. I wanted to talk to you guys. I guess I just monologued for 10 minutes about it. But I was curious, what somebody else thought about that. Is that interesting that we're very particular? The NHL's policies are very strict. You almost can't get into the building in many ways if you're not vaccinated, or the NBA has that in certain areas. But now with younger people who are less vaccinated, less control and less worry about that.
Well, my children were fully remote last year because they had to be at the beginning. But even when things opened back up and we had the ability to choose, they actually were doing so well that we let them pick, and they both decided they wanted to just keep doing it at home learning. So my kid's just going back to school for the first time this week. Wednesday was day one. I'm just saying that just as somebody that I haven't, from a sports standpoint, really given it a lot of thought, and I probably should be thinking about it more. My son just texted me that he's going to the Will North football game tonight. And, so you got a bunch of, it's not just the players out there. You have a lot of kids in the stands and running around. And, I know that when you show up at a high school football game at that age, your eyes aren't just entirely on the action. You're running around and at the concession stand, and
your mouths are not just on the action.
What's that?
Well, that was maybe a off-color joke that I told, but
what was
brought
it?
What'd you by Amherst Pizza now?
Right, yeah.
I missed what you said. You have to say it now. You have to repeat it.
Well, what did you say? You said their eyes aren't always on the game, and I said their mouths aren't always on the game. But in a way, maybe that's what it is. You're yelling at the field. You're yelling in people's faces. You're turning. You're shouting. The cheerleaders face the crowd. And I'm not certain that that's a risky situation outdoors, but we are breathing on each other in ways that for the last 18 months, we didn't really want to do.
Yeah, I think that there's probably part of the psychology is people are sick of having things been so different for so long that they just want to dive right back into it. And of course, that's what drives a lot of the political discussion these days too. But yeah, maybe we are letting our guards down a little too much because we feel like my family is all entirely vaccinated. I guess, is there some sort of attitude like that? Like we've done our part. What else can we do? I mean, meaning I obviously wear mask, social distance, not go to the game, stay at home, homeschool. Yeah, you can still keep doing all that, but there does come a point, I think, where you're just saying that we've done all we can do. We've gotten our vaccinations. We'll get our booster shots when those are available, and we're supposed to be taking those. And
yeah, maybe there's not much else that you can do on an individual level. I think population-wise, we could treat high school sports and youth sports more like we are professional sports in large venues where
even vaccinated, would you want to be in the stands for the Bills game on Sunday?
It's outdoors, but probably not. I mean, I wouldn't trust my vaccine to protect me in that situation. I would hope that maybe being outdoors or whatnot would do the trick. But yeah, no, I don't think that you're protected from the vaccine in the way from, maybe you're protected from getting sick, but from the virus spreading and catching it and spreading it to somebody else. And we're seeing that in sports. Lane Kiffin team is at Ole Miss 100% vaccinated, and he tests positive and missed the game. So I don't think we're nearly out of the woods as far as players testing positive and not being available at certain points in the season. But my point was that I was less concerned about whether the Bills might have to play a game with fewer wide receivers than you would be about high school sports and high school activities just leading to greater community spread and being a bigger problem than, what happens on the field.
Yeah, it's an excellent point. I guess that's just the monstrosity of professional sports. And
well, and the Bill Stadium's an interesting thing too. It went from the county executive saying everybody had to be vaccinated to dropping that restriction to now it is in the federal policy that large sporting venues should require vaccination or a negative test to have thousands of people gather together. So what will be the policy going forward? Maybe it's too difficult to change for this game, but will there be a stricter vaccine or negative test policy in the future?
I would be surprised if the protocols don't get harsher for the media, for everybody. And maybe we even get back to reduced attendance, because there are still a lot of troubling things that are going on from a community standpoint. And yes, you can do everything in your power within your family and in your community, but the NFL and all these, there are business decisions that need to be made at some point with a lot of companies.
And they're
And
going to want full stadiums for as long as they possibly can. And if they feel like squeezing out the media can accomplish some of that or save them some face, in terms of being extra careful with the virus, well, it's going to be a hard line to toe, right? And you're like, yeah, we don't want the media in here talking to our guys, but we're cool with, 70,000 people in the stands. They can all get it. Just don't get it into our locker room, basically.
yeah, with Josh Allen doing a lap around the ring of the stadium, giving everybody, fist bumps and high fives. But yeah, we don't need these 15 reporters in our locker room getting closer than 6 feet. There are so many, there's just so many ways that it's too many variables, I guess.
The NFLPA doesn't want us in the locker room is the line, that it's as much coming from them as anybody. And yet they certainly don't want to mandate the vaccine. So riddle me that.
But we are allowed in interview rooms where the players generally don't wear masks. I think the media does have to wear masks, but that changes.
Team employees don't have to. Media members do. I don't know. It feels like a moving target much more than last year, when one uniform set of rules for every player, for every staff member, for every person that crossed through the security gate at the stadium. And now it's quite a bit different. But it is interesting, to Jonah's point, Mark Poloncarz was, early on, I believe one of the first, not to toot his horn, sure he's listening, that, said we're going to require
one of his assistants certainly is.
And he was one of the first that I saw anyways to, make that proclamation. I don't know if he had the necessary power to make it happen, but it's happening a lot of other places. There's a lot of stadiums that are saying, yeah, if you want to watch a game here, that's fine. But you need to be vaccinated. So we'll see how that evolves throughout the course of the season and what all happens there.
And testing, I think the NFLPA is right to be pushing for more frequent testing of vaccinated players, and vaccinated people testing themselves or getting tested more frequently is something I think that we all need to participate in order to get these numbers down.
Yeah, I guess that's one of the benefits of being in the media and covering this team, is that I have to get tested. They provide it every 2 weeks. I'm tested.
But you do and I
now.
don't. There's
Every
different
week now.
tiers. That's another thing. I mean, maybe it only affects certain people in a small way, but some people going to the game on Sunday do have to get tested before arriving, and some people don't.
That's right. Well, it's a good talk, boys. Thanks for everyone's thoughts. Matthew, this isn't goodbye.
Not even close.
You'll do this some more. CTBK might insist upon it. You've had direct communication from the K and CTBK who want you on this program. Who am I? Who am I to say one way or the other?
This is the face that people log on to YouTube to see.
You're the franchise. So for Matthew Fairburn of The Athletic, just going to be in a different town for The Athletic, and for Jonah Bronstein of the New Bronstein Times, I am Tim Graham, thanking you, the listener and or viewer, for checking out another episode of Tim Graham and Friends, brought to you by CTBK, CPAs and Business Consultants.
CTBK is more than just a full-service accounting firm. They are one team with an innovative approach to accounting and rise to each new challenge with collaborative problem-solving skills. CTBK goes above and beyond by lending helping hands in the Buffalo and Niagara community through volunteer work and donations, and is partnered up with Victory Sports for 2020 and 2021 to keep kids in the community active. The professionals at CTBK are determined to help individuals and businesses succeed. Whether a large corporation, a small business, or somewhere in between, call CTBK at 716-630-2400. Again, 716-630-2400, and see what CTBK's one-team approach can do for you.